Did you know Chester Carlson invented the first photocopy machine all the way back in 1938? Me neither. Anyways, I'm Andy with Poster Grind, and today I'm going to show you how to create a vintage photocopy effect in Photoshop. We'll be using some smart objects, the filter gallery, some grain, Gaussian blur, a little bit of motion blur, and a bunch of awesome textures to get this awesome technique rocking. Let's dive on in. All right, today I'm going to be using a resolution of 100, and you can adjust yours to the same by going to image and then image size, hitting OK. And as soon as your image is cropped and ready, I'm going to go ahead and make a copy by hitting Command J. And if your copy is not a smart object yet, go ahead and right click and go to convert to smart object to make sure that it is. Then go ahead and hide that bottom image, and we can go back to that if we have to in the future. Now going back to that copied image, we're going to hit Command U to bring up our hue saturation. Then we're going to drop the saturation all the way to the left to create a black and white image. Now we're going to increase the contrast by hitting Command M, and that will bring up a curves tool, and we can just do an S curve to increase the contrast as such. Then hit OK. Next, let's go up to filter, and then we're going to go to the filter gallery. As soon as you're in filter gallery, go ahead and hit Command plus to zoom in so we can see these subtle effects. So the first thing is you're going to want to add a torn edges filter, and that can be found in the sketch folder. And then on that, we're going to drop the image balance to 21. Smoothness we can keep at 15. And then the contrast, we'll just leave that at 1. Next, go ahead and hit this plus button down here to add another filter. And then we're going to go to grain, which can be found in your texture folder. And on grain, you can decrease the intensity down to a 4. We'll leave the contrast at 0, and then you're definitely going to want to make sure the grain type is set to horizontal so that you see these horizontal photocopy textures already in the filter. Then hit OK. Now let's add a little bit of blur. So we're going to go up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, and it's going to be really subtle at 0.5 pixels. Now let's add some more blur, but to do that, we're just going to hit Command J by creating a copy of what we've just done. Then we're going to rasterize that layer by going right-clicking, rasterize layer. Now that it's rasterized, we're going to add another blur, but this time a motion blur. So go to Blur, Motion Blur, and then make sure your angle's set to 0 so that it's horizontal. And then our distance we can put at 26 and hit OK. Now let's add a mask by going to the mask button, hitting Command I to invert that mask. Then we can paint in some of that blur around the edges to make this a little bit more realistic and coherent with our textures. So go ahead and hit B on the keyboard, painting with white. We're just going to paint around some of these edges like so to give it a little bit more distortion, like that. Now let's go ahead and add some textures. So our first texture I have up, we're going to activate that, and then we're going to mess with the blending mode, dropping it down to color dodge. Then we're going to use this other photocopy paper, and we're going to use the blending mode. Let's see here. We'll go to darken. Now it looks too dark, but what we can do is hit Command I to invert that. And then we're going to actually use a layer style. So let's go ahead and double click that layer, bringing up our layer styles. Then we're going to drop this to 252 by holding down Option on your keyboard and then dropping the slider to the left just a little bit, and then hit OK. Now let's go to that next texture. We can put this one on darken as well. And we're just going to drop the opacity to about 50%. Then on that next texture, we'll do the same thing. We'll drop this one down to darken. And we'll drop the opacity down a little bit just so it's not too contrasty. Something like that. And our final move is to add a little bit of vintage color and weathering to our image. So I'm going to go down to gradient map. And then on gradient map, I'm going to click the gradient. And on this first stop, we're going to add a little bit of orange to our black, like that. And then on our white stop, we're going to add a little bit of orange to the white, but very subtle, like that. And once you're happy, hit OK, and you have yourself a very cool vintage photocopy style graphic. Now, I just want to say thank you for watching, and hopefully I see you on the next video.